The woolen blanket felt impossibly soft against Han Myong-gil's weathered skin as he pulled it up to his chin on his first night in American captivity, the thick fabric providing warmth and comfort he had almost forgotten could exist. Beneath his aching head rested something even more miraculous, an actual pillow, stuffed with real down and covered in clean cotton that smelled of soap and sunshine rather than the mud, sweat, and blood that had defined his existence for the past 18 months of brutal warfare. Around him in the prisoner barracks, dozens of other North Korean soldiers lay in similar states of amazement, fingering their own blankets and pillows as if these simple comforts might disappear at any moment like mirages in the desert. It was November 1950, just weeks after Han's capture near Seoul during the chaotic retreat following the UN counteroffensive. The early Korean winter was beginning to bite with its legendary ferocity, and Han had expected to spend the coming months shivering on bare floors with nothing but his torn uniform to ward off the mountain cold that could kill men as surely as any bullet. Instead, he found himself lying on a proper cot with bedding that seemed impossibly luxurious, not just adequate for survival, but actually designed for comfort, as if American military doctrine somehow included the radical notion that even enemy prisoners deserved to sleep well. Han had been a mountain guide before the war, leading hunting parties and traders through the treacherous passes of the Taebaek Mountains where his family had lived for generations in harmony with seasons that demanded constant preparation for survival. The blankets he had known were thin affairs woven from whatever fibers could be obtained locally, often more holes than fabric, always insufficient against the brutal Korean winter. A pillow had been an unimaginable luxury. Mountain people slept with their heads on bundled clothes or folded blankets, accepting discomfort as a natural part of existence that separated the strong from the weak. The American sergeant who had distributed the bedding, a quiet man from Montana who seemed genuinely concerned about prisoner welfare, had explained through interpreters that adequate sleep was essential for health, and that proper bedding was standard issue for all personnel under American military care. The casual manner in which this explanation was delivered, as if providing comfortable sleeping arrangements for enemy soldiers was the most natural thing in the world, challenged everything Han had been taught about American priorities and the brutal efficiency of capitalist military organization. This is the story of that blanket and that pillow and thousands like them. Simple items that would transform not just how these prisoners slept, but how they understood the relationship between power and compassion, between military strength and human dignity, between enemies and the possibility of unexpected kindness in the midst of humanity's darkest moments. The Korean War had erupted in June 1950 with both sides convinced that their enemies were inhuman monsters incapable of genuine compassion or concern for individual welfare. North Korean propaganda had portrayed Americans as ruthless imperialists who would work prisoners to death in conditions of deliberate cruelty, while American training had emphasized the fanatical nature of communist soldiers who supposedly cared nothing for human comfort or individual needs. For prisoners like Han, the discovery that American captors were not only providing adequate bedding, but actually ensuring prisoner comfort was profoundly disorienting. Han's capture during the retreat from Seoul had been terrifying because communist authorities had prepared him to expect torture, forced labor, and systematic brutality designed to extract intelligence and break prisoner morale. Instead, he found himself processed through an intake system that included medical examination, clean clothing, adequate food, and assignment to heated barracks equipped with individual cots, blankets, and pillows that represented comfort beyond anything most North Korean soldiers experienced during active military service. The blankets themselves were revelations of American industrial capability and organizational culture. Made from high-quality wool processed in American textile mills, woven to military specifications for durability and warmth, and manufactured in quantities sufficient to supply not just American forces, but also thousands of enemy prisoners. They represented productive capacity that seemed impossible to men from societies where textile production remained largely manual and localized. The pillows were even more remarkable, stuffed with genuine down feathers and covered in cotton fabric that had been cleaned, pressed, and maintained according to military standards that emphasized hygiene and comfort alongside basic functionality. Han had never slept with his head on anything so soft, so clean, or so obviously designed for human comfort rather than mere survival. The pillow seemed to embody American assumptions about human dignity that were completely foreign to his experience. Private Morrison, the Montana rancher who supervised bedding distribution in Han's barracks, approached his duties with matter-of-fact efficiency that suggested providing comfortable sleeping arrangements for enemy prisoners was routine rather than extraordinary humanitarian gesture. His explanations about the importance of adequate rest for prisoner health and morale revealed military doctrine that considered human welfare a practical necessity rather than sentimental luxury. The concept of institutionalized comfort was revolutionary for men raised in societies where hardship was viewed as character-building and luxury was seen as potentially corrupting influence that weakened revolutionary resolve. In North Korean military culture, soldiers were expected to endure discomfort as proof of ideological commitment, and providing excessive comfort to anyone, including friendly forces, was viewed with suspicion as potentially bourgeois deviation from proper socialist values. Han's first night with proper bedding was an emotional experience that reconnected him with childhood memories of warmth and security he had almost forgotten during years of military service and months of brutal combat. The simple act of pulling a soft blanket over his body and resting his head on a genuine pillow triggered psychological responses that went far beyond physical comfort. Feelings of safety, dignity, and human worth that he had been trained to suppress as dangerous individualistic tendencies. The social dynamics surrounding bedding distribution provided daily lessons in American attitudes toward individual dignity and human welfare. Guards didn't simply throw blankets at prisoners and walk away. They took time to ensure that each man received adequate bedding, helped elderly or injured prisoners arrange their sleeping areas, and regularly checked to make sure that everyone was staying warm and comfortable during cold nights. Sergeant Kim Tae-hun, a former political instructor who had been captured alongside Han, was initially suspicious of American generosity in providing such comfortable accommodations for enemy prisoners. This is psychological warfare designed to weaken our revolutionary spirit, he whispered during evening discussions in the barracks. They want to make us soft and dependent on capitalist luxuries, so we'll forget our duty to the people and become corrupted by bourgeois comfort that serves no productive purpose. But even Kim found his ideological resistance weakening as the blankets and pillows provided genuine relief from physical discomfort and enabled the kind of restorative sleep that was essential for maintaining mental and physical health during the stress of captivity. The immediate practical benefits of adequate bedding were too obvious and important to dismiss as mere capitalist manipulation, especially when American guards seemed to take genuine satisfaction in ensuring prisoner comfort. The quality and maintenance of prisoner bedding impressed men with experience in textile production and military logistics. The blankets were regularly collected for washing and returned clean and properly pressed, demonstrating systematic attention to hygiene and prisoner welfare that extended far beyond basic survival needs. The pillows were periodically refilled and recovered, maintaining their comfort and cleanliness according to standards that seemed impossibly high for prisoner accommodations. Corporal Anderson from Wisconsin, who had grown up in a family textile business and understood fabric quality from both manufacturing and consumer perspectives, began sharing knowledge about American textile industries through informal conversations during evening bedding inspections. His descriptions of mechanized wool processing, industrial weaving operations, and mass production techniques painted pictures of productive capacity that seemed almost mythical to prisoners from societies where such items remained luxury goods available only to the highest political officials. The medical benefits of proper bedding became apparent during Korea's brutal winter months, when adequate sleep and body warmth were essential for preventing illness and maintaining the physical strength necessary to survive captivity. American medical personnel explained that comfortable sleeping arrangements were not luxury, but practical necessity for maintaining prisoner health and preventing the disease outbreaks that could devastate confined populations during extreme weather. Han began to understand that the blankets and pillows represented something profound about American approaches to human welfare and institutional organization. The same logistical systems that could provide comfortable bedding to thousands of enemy prisoners could also supply complex equipment, medical materials, and humanitarian aid to military forces and civilian populations anywhere in the world. The daily bedding service was a small demonstration of organizational culture and industrial capacity that had implications far beyond prisoner comfort. The contrast with North Korean approaches to military accommodation and prisoner welfare was painful for men who began to recognize how different their homeland's priorities had been. Han remembered nights during active combat when entire units had slept without adequate shelter, when soldiers shared thin blankets among multiple men, when officers received only marginally better accommodations than enlisted personnel, and when prisoner comfort was never considered a legitimate concern for military resources. As winter deepened in late 1950 and early 1951, the blankets and pillows became increasingly important for prisoners' survival and morale during the darkest and coldest months of captivity. The comfort provided by proper bedding wasn't just physical. It was psychological, offering daily evidence that their American captors viewed them as human beings deserving of basic dignity rather than as objects to be warehoused under minimal survival conditions. The reliability of bedding service. Clean blankets and pillows provided consistently regardless of weather, military operations, or supply difficulties, demonstrated American organizational competence and commitment to prisoner welfare that extended beyond immediate practical necessities into the realm of institutional humanitarianism. This consistency was itself a form of soft power that revealed systematic concern for human dignity. The educational aspects of bedding quality provided unexpected insights into American manufacturing capabilities and consumer culture. Prisoners learned that similar blankets and pillows were standard issue for American military personnel, that civilian families throughout America slept with comparable comfort, and that textile industries produced such items in quantities sufficient to supply entire populations rather than just political elites. Private Cho Won-ho, a former weaver who had worked in North Korean textile cooperatives before military conscription, became fascinated by the construction and quality of American blankets and pillows. His examination of weaving techniques, fiber quality, and finishing processes revealed manufacturing sophistication that far exceeded anything he had observed in North Korean industrial facilities, providing technical education that expanded his understanding of what modern industrial society could achieve. The cultural significance of comfortable bedding in American society gradually became apparent through conversations with guards who shared personal memories of childhood bedrooms, family traditions around bedtime comfort, and regional preferences for different types of blankets and pillows. These stories revealed a culture where physical comfort was considered a legitimate human need rather than dangerous indulgence that weakened character or distracted from serious political objectives. As spring arrived in 1951, the transition from winter to warmer weather demonstrated American systematic attention to prisoner comfort through all seasons. Heavier winter blankets were replaced with lighter summer bedding. Pillow covers were changed more frequently to maintain hygiene during hot weather, and sleeping arrangements were adjusted to ensure adequate ventilation while maintaining individual privacy and comfort. The industrial scale of American bedding production became even more impressive when prisoners learned that similar comfortable sleeping arrangements were being provided simultaneously to thousands of American military personnel throughout Korea, Japan, and other Pacific theater operations, as well as to prisoner populations in multiple detention facilities. The logistical coordination required to maintain such widespread bedding distribution demonstrated organizational capabilities that had applications far beyond military operations. Summer months brought different challenges for bedding management as American personnel worked to prevent overheating while maintaining adequate comfort for prisoners who were accustomed to sleeping arrangements that varied dramatically with seasonal conditions. The systematic approach to seasonal bedding adjustment revealed attention to prisoner welfare that considered long-term health and comfort rather than just immediate survival needs. The autumn of 1951 brought renewed appreciation for quality bedding as temperatures began dropping and prisoners faced their second winter in American custody with enhanced understanding of what they had been provided. Men who had initially taken blankets and pillows for granted now recognized them as evidence of systematic concern for human dignity that extended far beyond basic captivity requirements. As 1952 progressed and armistice negotiations began showing promise, many prisoners faced the prospect of repatriation with complex emotions about leaving behind sleeping accommodations that had become precious symbols of unexpected humanity in the midst of warfare. How could they explain to family members that enemy captors had provided them with better bedding than most North Korean civilians possessed? How could they readjust to sleeping arrangements that would seem impossibly primitive after experiencing American standards of comfort? The psychological impact of comfortable bedding extended beyond immediate physical benefits to influence prisoner attitudes toward their captors, their own government, and the nature of different social systems. Men who had been taught that capitalist societies were characterized by exploitation and indifference to human suffering found those beliefs challenged by daily evidence of systematic concern for prisoner comfort and dignity. Sergeant Lee Dong-soo, who had served as a political education instructor before his capture, found his worldview fundamentally altered by months of sleeping on comfortable bedding provided by enemies who were supposed to be heartless exploiters. If Americans can afford to give enemy prisoners better blankets and pillows than our own soldiers receive, he reflected during private conversations with trusted fellow prisoners, what does that say about the relative strength and priorities of our two systems? The final months of 1952 brought increased urgency to prisoner discussions about bedding and other aspects of American prisoner treatment as armistice negotiations suggested that repatriation might occur in the near future. Many prisoners began paying closer attention to construction details of their blankets and pillows, hoping to gain knowledge that might somehow be applicable to improving conditions in their homeland after the war. The winter of 1952 to 1953 provided opportunities for prisoners to fully appreciate the quality and consistency of American bedding service as they experienced their second year of comfortable sleeping arrangements under enemy care. The contrast with their memories of previous winters spent in inadequate shelter with insufficient protection against Korean cold was stark and emotionally powerful. Spring 1953 brought final phases of armistice negotiations and growing certainty that prisoner repatriation would occur in the near future. The prospect of leaving behind comfortable bedding that had become such an important part of daily routine created unexpected anxiety among prisoners who had grown accustomed to sleeping arrangements that seemed impossibly luxurious compared to what they remembered from their homeland. The final bedding issue before the armistice in July 1953 was emotionally charged as prisoners understood they were receiving their last clean blankets and pillows from American supply systems that had provided consistent comfort throughout their captivity. Many prisoners took special care to appreciate the softness of their blankets and the comfort of their pillows, understanding that such amenities might never be available to them again. Private Morrison, the Montana rancher who had supervised bedding distribution throughout Han's captivity, made special efforts during final weeks to ensure that all prisoners received the best possible blankets and pillows available, taking personal satisfaction in providing comfort for men who would soon be returning to uncertain circumstances in their devastated homeland. The repatriation process that began in August 1953 included final demonstrations of American organizational efficiency and humanitarian concern as prisoners were provided with new blankets for their journey home, gifts that represented lasting symbols of unexpected kindness received during captivity. Many prisoners carefully packed these farewell blankets as treasured possessions that would remind them of American generosity for years to come. Han Myong-gil stood at the rail of a repatriation ship in September 1953, holding a folded American military blanket that Private Morrison had given him as a parting gift. The woolen fabric represented something precious, daily evidence of systematic concern for human dignity that had challenged everything he had previously understood about enemy intentions and the nature of different social systems. The North Korea he was returning to had been devastated by 3 years of intensive bombing and ground warfare, with textile production facilities destroyed and consumer goods virtually non-existent. The comfortable bedding that had become routine during American captivity would be impossible to obtain or replace in his homeland, making the farewell blanket even more precious as a tangible reminder of abundance and comfort he had experienced as an enemy prisoner. But Han carried with him more than just a woolen blanket and memories of comfortable sleeping arrangements. He carried a fundamentally different understanding of what modern industrial society could achieve when human comfort was considered a legitimate goal rather than dangerous luxury, when systematic attention to individual dignity became routine rather than exceptional, and when even enemies could be treated with generosity that revealed the best possibilities of human civilization. The story doesn't end with repatriation and return to a homeland where such comfort remained unavailable to most citizens. In the decades that followed the Korean War, some former prisoners carried their memories of American bedding quality and prisoner treatment as they contributed to reconstruction efforts and gradual economic development. While comfortable bedding remained scarce, the understanding of what systematic attention to human comfort could mean for social welfare influenced perspectives on development priorities and quality of life. Some former prisoners became advocates for improved living conditions and worker welfare within the constraints of North Korean political and economic structures, arguing that attention to basic human needs could improve productivity and morale without undermining revolutionary objectives. Others shared their bedding experiences with trusted family members as examples of what prosperous societies could provide when industrial capacity was abundant and well-organized. The American personnel who had provided comfortable bedding to North Korean prisoners returned to civilian life with enhanced appreciation for the routine comfort and quality consumer goods they had always taken for granted, along with deeper understanding of how such amenities appeared to people from societies where basic comfort remained unavailable to most citizens. The prisoner bedding program had demonstrated something profound about the relationship between industrial capacity and human dignity. It had shown that societies with advanced manufacturing capabilities could afford to provide comfort even to their enemies, and that such generosity could be more effective than coercion in demonstrating the superiority of their values and social organization. But perhaps most importantly, the blankets and pillows had revealed the power of simple comfort to maintain human dignity and hope under the most difficult circumstances. The prisoners who had learned to sleep comfortably in American camps had experienced something that transcended political ideology and national identity: the universal human need for warmth, comfort, and the recognition that basic dignity deserves protection even for those who were once enemies. The woolen blanket would eventually wear thin with use and time. The down pillow would lose its softness, and the comfortable sleeping arrangements would become precious memories of unexpected humanity received during humanity's darkest moments. But the lessons learned through thousands of comfortable nights, that abundance was possible, that enemies could be generous, that human dignity could be maintained even during warfare, would continue to influence understanding and hope long after the last thread had unraveled and the final feather had lost its spring. Today, comfortable bedding is taken for granted throughout much of the developed world, including South Korea, where modern textile industries produce blankets and pillows that would have seemed impossibly luxurious to previous generations. The North Korean prisoners who first encountered quality American bedding in 1950s prison camps witnessed an early example of how industrial capacity and systematic attention to human welfare could create new possibilities for dignity and comfort even under the most challenging circumstances. The blanket had been folded and stored away. The pillow had been pressed and recovered, and the prisoners had returned to a homeland where such comfort remained largely unavailable. But the memory of soft wool against skin, the understanding of what systematic care could provide, and the recognition that even bitter enemies could demonstrate unexpected kindness would prove more lasting than any political system and more powerful than any ideology seeking to deny the fundamental human need for comfort, dignity, and hope. That perhaps is the ultimate lesson of the Korean War prisoner bedding program: that sometimes the most profound expressions of human civilization come not through grand political gestures or military victories, but through simple acts of providing comfort that recognize and honor our common need for warmth, rest, and dignity. The blankets and pillows had served their purpose and been packed away, but their message would endure: that advanced societies can choose to provide comfort as well as bare survival, that enemies can become objects of care rather than subjects for punishment, and that a soft blanket and clean pillow offered with genuine concern can become symbols of everything that makes human life worth preserving and human dignity worth defending.